In the dead of night, in a remote Afghan village, an American doctor lay captive in a pitch-black room. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by barking dogs and the crack of gunfire. This is the story of Dr. Joseph's harrowing ordeal, the daring SEAL Team 6 hostage rescue mission that brought him home, and the ultimate sacrifice of one brave operator. Dr. Dilip Joseph was a well-travelled American doctor who worked with a non-profit organisation training healthcare workers. In 2012, he was back in Afghanistan on his 11th visit. But on December the 5th, Dr. Joseph was to come close to losing his life. On this particular occasion, Dr. Joseph was travelling from Kabul to one of the most rural community centres. As he didn't speak the local language Pashto, he was travelling with two Afghan colleagues, one of which was his translator. After finishing their work that day, they went to a local police chief's house for lunch, where there was some conversation going on about security measures in the area. Though this was fairly typical for workers in Afghanistan at this time, so he didn't think much of it. After lunch, Dr. Joseph and his two colleagues began driving back to Kabul. As they came down a winding mountain road, the driver suddenly put the brakes on very quickly. As things came into focus, Dr. Joseph saw a man with a gun standing in front of their truck. The man fired a warning shot, triggering more men also with weapons to swarm the front and the back of the vehicle. 4 men were now aiming their rifles at Dr. Joseph and his two colleagues, and told them to get out of their vehicle. Dr. Joseph was Indian by birth, so did not look very different from the kidnappers, meaning that initially they didn't know who the foreigner was. The team were put back into the truck and taken to a very remote area, at which point they looked a bit more closely through the doctor's backpack, where they found his American passport. That changed things dramatically. Now in an already remote village, the kidnappers told the 3 men to get out of their truck at gunpoint and bound their hands. From here they started hiking, which Joseph describes as very difficult. The hike took about 9.5 hours, and they were made to walk non-stop. Despite Dr. Joseph pleading with the kidnappers that he was originally from a similar part of the world, and that he was here to help treat their brothers, the kidnappers ignored him. It was at this point Dr. Joseph began to realise he might lose his life. As the sun went down, the group hiked by moonlight to a remote shack. There, the 3 kidnappers made their demands. They wanted $300,000 and threatened to take the group to Pakistan to take their lives if they didn't obey their commands or receive the money. Joseph was allowed to call his office in Kabul to report the kidnapping and to relay the demands. But as the second day wore on, the group lost cell phone service, and through the translator, Joseph's 3 captors began to talk with him. They asked him a lot of questions about what his life was like, what his family was like, and why he does what he does. But negotiations for his release eventually broke down, and by the 4th day of captivity, the kidnappers decided to split up the group. Dr. Joseph figured that this was the last time they would see each other, so they said their goodbyes tearfully. 3 of the 5 captors seemed affected by the group's emotional farewell. However, the remainder seemed pleased and even made gestures about what they were going to do to Dr. Joseph. Then came the 4th night. At that point, Joseph was being held in a small pitch-black room. He heard dogs barking outside and the sheep making noise. He then heard gunfire. A member of the Navy's elite Gold Squadron SEAL Team 6, Chief Byers was about 2 months into a deployment to eastern Afghanistan when his team received their next mission, a hostage rescue. Dr. Joseph, the medical director of the non-profit organisation Morningstar Development, had been kidnapped along with his driver and Afghan interpreter on December 5, 2012. Byers made clear that success of the rescue operation relied on surprise, speed and aggressive action. They must be ready to trade their personal safety for another's. Each assaulter in the rescue force volunteered for this operation with full appreciation of the risks they were to undertake. 3 days later on December 8th, Byers' team were inserted by helicopter and hiked to a remote compound in the Karkagi district of Lagman province, where intelligence showed Dr. Joseph was being held. The team reached the building late at night after a 4-hour march to the mountainous location on primitive shingle footpaths. The long ascent gave Byers and his operators an appreciation of how high the stakes were for Dr. Joseph. As the team got within 25 metres of the target, the point man Nick Check raised his hand, ordering the Gold Squadron operators to freeze as a guard slowly walked around the side of the compound. But the guard spotted the SEALs and sprinted towards the main door, and with the element of surprise compromised, the SEALs rushed in. Check shouldered his HK-416 assault rifle and took a shot at the guard as he ran into the compound. There were some blankets hanging up being used as a door, meaning a traditional clear would be too risky. Czech careered through the makeshift door with Byers and the rest of the operators just seconds behind him, but as he did, a Taliban guard let loose a burst from his AK-47 assault rifle, and a round tragically struck Czech. Byers was the second man inside the building, sprinting in on Czech's heels. Byers struggled a little with the blanket doorway, but when he finally made his way through, there was a kidnapper in his field of view that he immediately engaged. He then saw another person moving across the floor. Byers didn't know whether or not that person was the hostage, or if it was just an enemy waking up and trying to get to their weapon, so he jumped on top of him, straddling and pinning him down with his legs. Now locked in hand-to-hand combat with the unknown man underneath him, Byers managed to subdue him with one hand and used the other to adjust the focus of his night vision goggles. Having done so, he saw that the man was one of the captors and engaged him with his weapon. At the same time, he was calling out, trying to find the location of Dr. Joseph, but the rounds from other operators in the compound were too loud. Eventually, he heard Joseph call out, alerting the SEALs to his presence. He was 3 to 5 feet away from where Byers had grappled with the guard. Byers immediately tackled the captive American hostage, using his own body to shield him from the fighting. From this position, Byers noticed another man close by. He was armed with grenades and had a weapon within arm's reach. Byers made the decision to lean as far as he could so he could pin the insurgent to the wall by his throat, incapacitating him until other operators were able to come in and neutralize. This happened swiftly and the compound was declared all clear. The entire raid was over in a matter of minutes. Byers then immediately turned his attention to Joseph, verifying his identity and making sure he was physically well and could walk. Other members of the team assessed the room, making sure all the grenades and explosives inside were safe and no pins had been pulled. Once this had been done, the team escorted Joseph out of the compound. It was only then that Byers was able to turn his focus to his teammate Czech, who was being triaged by a team medic. A former hospital corpsman and certified paramedic, Byers began to provide aid, helping to perform CPR on Czech during the 40-minute helicopter flight to Bagram Airfield. Despite the aid provided by Master Chief Byers and the team at Bagram Air Base, Chief Petty Officer Czech unfortunately succumbed to his injuries. Just a few days after the rescue, Dr. Joseph returned home safe and well to his family in Colorado. Chief Petty Officer Nick Czech was awarded the Navy Cross posthumously, whilst Master Chief Byers was awarded the Medal of Honor for their roles in the rescue of Dr. Dilip Joseph. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to the channel for more content.